we're going to try it and see. Preparing to live stream. Hey, look, I'm doing something new with you, Melinda. Go
I'm
figure.
so
I
excited.
know, me
Glad to
too.
get us both out of our comfort zone a little bit then.
I know. Okay, so I don't know how this is gonna go, but I guess as soon as I hit record. So we're gonna hit record and we're gonna get started. You good?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
it's
great.
live streaming now. Okay. Oh, and I can record on this computer. Okay. I was about to say happy birthday. It's not her birthday, but we could pretend like it is. It is just a happy Wednesday. Welcome to another episode of Design Recharge. This is episode 331, and we are trying something new because Melinda Livesey is always a good person to push you to go further, to try something, and it's okay, even if it doesn't always go right. It's just practice, right? Nobody's expecting it to be perfect. And we are now live streaming on YouTube as well as recorded. So it's cool. This is also a podcast. So if you're watching or listening, you can hit like and subscribe and whatever if you're just listening later on, whatever. Okay. Okay, Melinda Livesey is here today. Melinda has done so many things that I want to do. She's inspiration to a lot of people, but she's a brand strategist. That's her pish poshy way of saying it. She doesn't say that like that. Anyway, so she was a designer. She says she's a designer turned brand strategist. And so, without further ado, Melinda, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Diane. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited for you to be here. So I have tons of questions. You are the third and last entrepreneur that has pivoted. So I think most of my audience is either they work a day job and they have a side hustle, or they are full-time on their own and they're trying to figure out how to market and how to do all the things that we're trying to do and have multiple streams of income. And that's something that you've done really well. You started, can you give us a little bit of your background? You started out as a designer, and then what made you've had multiple pivots, but you've had some different ways. Can you kind of go through that really for us?
Yeah. So I was, like you had mentioned, I started out as a graphic designer. I was an in-house graphic designer, ended up getting laid off, and I had always wanted to work for myself. So I thought, okay, this is the perfect time because now I'm not forced into it, but kind of. It was an open door for me to start my own thing. So I started off my own, and I just took anything and everything. Then I realized, oh, I probably should refine this and actually make a business out of it. And so I concentrated on brand identity. And from there, I had a bunch of people asking me how to freelance and what I was doing to get clients. So I thought, oh, well, why don't I just teach this? So I came out with an e-course about 4 years ago on that. And then I was still getting work with clients. And then I pivoted to brand strategy. So I learned brand strategy at the encouragement of my coach that I started with 3 years ago, our mutual friend, Christelle. And then from there, I learned that and I started getting clients in that. And then from there, I have been teaching people what or how to make that same transition. So I find myself, I'm seeing a pattern now in my career is that I do something, I learn something, and I turn around and I teach what I just did. And then I go forward and I do something new, and then I turn around and I teach what I just did. And it's been really helpful for me because it solidifies what I've just learned and what I just did so I can understand it clearly, but then I'm able to help those who also want to make a similar transition. So now that I've been doing this for about 5 years of the learning and teaching and learning and teaching, that I'm noticing this pattern now that it just naturally forms that I'm discovering.
But I think that you missed one thing out of
What did I
that. So
miss?
learning,
What did I miss?
teaching, but you have a huge, you are really community minded. And
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
not just like, hey, I learned how to knit today. Everybody come, let's knit. It's not anything. It's things that people are asking you, and that people, because you're in there, you're not doing these completely solo. You're still living in these areas, and you're seeing where other people are struggling, because I think that it's the vacuum is what we get. And when we're entrepreneurs, we're like, just grind. So if we learn something there, if we're not paying attention, there could be tons of other people who are teaching that same thing. And so that's the thing. That's the one thing I think you're missing. You didn't
Yeah.
say in your say when you
Yeah.
were explaining it, because you really do have, that's such a natural ability of yours, is
Mhm.
that community aspect for sure.
That's
Don't you
probably
think?
why I forgot. That's probably why I forgot about it, because it does come so natural to me that I feel like I can't do what I do without the community that I have. And so maybe I just take it for granted that because I think, well, that you just have to have that. So to me, it's a non-negotiable. So yeah, it's something that I didn't even think to mention. So thank you, Diane.
But you also have a way of figuring out what would be something really pressing that would help people. It's not like just knitting, although that is a great skill. But you have a way of I don't know, navigating to see which is a skill that's really going to be something that's going to help a lot of people, but also help a lot of people make money, and
Mhm.
also be so profitable for them, and also something that's profitable for you. And you also give a ton of content away.
Right. Right, exactly. Yeah, I think it's a mix of, well, I at first I just go out and on an adventure and try to do something that I want to do, and I make money at it and it helps people. I'm like, cool. Now I want to teach people what I just did because it solved a problem for me. And I figured, well, if it solved a problem for me and I was able to overcome something and overcome an obstacle, I'm sure there's a bunch of other people that also want to overcome this specific obstacle, especially if it's emotionally, if there's pain in there, if there's an emotional pain point. So for me, before I switched to strategy, I had a ton of pain points. I had low budget clients. I had tons of revisions. I didn't know how to charge for the creative ideas and thinking that I was already doing, but then clients wouldn't even accept it. And so I wanted to be valued and used to my ultimate potential as a creative. And so when I learned brand strategy, it answered all of those questions. It ticked all those boxes. And it solved such a huge pain point for me that I'm like, I can't keep this to myself. I know there's other people out there that are feeling a similar way. I want to help them also get to where I'm at, because it's life changing. It was literally life and career changing. And I feel like I'd be selfish to just keep it to myself. And I get so much reward out of sharing what I've learned too. So it's a win-win on all sides.
I think that's a great way. So one, you created a product of something that you kept being asked to how did you do this? How did you do this? One, you also have really high empathy for other people who are in the same situation. You know that there's enough work to go around, right? There's not that fear that, oh, no, I'm not going to share this, right? Because you share a lot of information all the time.
Mhm.
So that's a philosophy. Is that lifelong, or is that something you had to accept and like, nope, this is how I'm going to be? Or what started that kind of spark of just being able to freely share?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's always been in me. I think I've had times of struggling with, oh, should I give away everything? But those are very short lived. And then I realized, and especially with Christo, my coach, drilling it in my head, just give away everything, just be transparent, that it will come back to you, that I've been okay with it. And I think the longer that I'm in this career, and the longer that I see that I can just give away everything, and when I say give away everything too, I'm telling stories, I'm sharing what's happened, I'm sharing what I've done. I mean, I give away everything. However, the things that I charge for are things that are a worked out process. And so those things I charge for because I actually spend an immense amount of time developing these processes that do end up with a specific measurable result. That I charge for because it's very specific to get a result. Whereas all the content I share, someone could implement every single free bit of content that I have out there and probably get the same results as someone who invested money to go through the process of whatever I developed. But it's me doing the heavy lifting for them as, hey, do this first, then do this, then do this. So if you need like an outline and to be guided through the process, then that's what I charge for. But other than that, I take pieces of everything I teach in courses and whatnot and give it away in content. So really you could probably get everything, almost everything that I share in a course, just not a roadmap in free
Well,
content.
well, and I think that's so it right. It is the roadmap. So if you're
Yeah.
thinking about something that you get asked a lot, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you just have to create content for designers. So me and you both create content for designers, but I've also thought, okay, well, if I'm stepping outside of this, what kind of other, say I'm doing food and beverage and I love to do packaging. That was Jason Karn, was our first entrepreneur on this entrepreneurial pivot. And I was like, you could go to conferences that are for entrepreneurs. I mean, for food and beverage people, you know, and I think that sometimes we just don't think outside, and sometimes our best thing is drawing and sitting behind the computer, but sometimes we have to step out you have to kind of work on that sales portion of it and that community portion about making everybody better and sharing some information. Okay. So when in the course of, so they downsized and you lost your job. Were you already working on the first course, or were you just doing your own design? You were just freelancing. And then you're like, when in that period did you start working on the course?
It was a year after. So immediately after I got laid off, I thought, okay, I got to make this work. And I took everything. I think I worked in an agency for a month or two, right? It was the next day I was at a friend's agency and worked there. And I just thought, okay, I just got to make my bills. I just have to make this work. And then I realized, oh, this isn't sustainable. So I need to figure this out. So 6 months in, I rebranded to just position myself as a brand identity designer, even though I was doing a bunch of little work on the side. I just didn't put that out into the public. And then, a year after that is when, so a year after I got laid off was when I started on the e-course.
All right. And so how long did it take to go from making it idea to launching it, and then from launching to, I don't know if it was a live course or what, because it's not like, oh, you know what, this weekend I'm just going to make a course, right?
Well, some people do that. That is definitely not me. So I think I had the idea in late spring. So I got laid off in the summertime of 2015. And so late spring 2016 is when I had this idea. Like, I've been asked so many times about how I'm doing this, especially from old coworkers that also got laid off at the same time. They're like, how are you doing what you're doing? Because they didn't want to work at another full-time job and they wanted to work for themselves. So I thought, well, let me put together an outline. So I quickly put together an outline. I emailed it over to who is my business partner for that specific e-course now. But at that time, she was just a friend and we had talked about wanting to collaborate. And I said, hey, I have this idea. I'm willing to teach it. And you do sales and marketing. Would you want to do the back end and all of that? And she's like, yeah, let's do it. And so from that, at that time, I wasn't really involved in the design community. So I went on Facebook and joined every single design group I could find. And most of them were college groups. So the graphic design AIGA groups all over the US, I would go in there, but I would ask the admins, hey, I'm looking for some beta testers. It's free. I'm not looking to charge anyone. I just would love to give some free information, get their feedback. Would you mind if I posted in the group? So I did that and I got 36 students from that, and they were all beta testers. So I ran it for free during the summertime. So that took maybe, I want to say it took a couple months for us to get the outline going. And granted, we're working on other stuff. We have clients that we're still working with. This was not putting all of our time into it. And that's my pivots always do that. I always overlap a little bit with what I did previously, just because I needed the funds, right, to keep going. And so then the beta launched in June of that year, of 2016, had the beta go through it for about 6 weeks, I want to say, got feedback from them. And then I re-recorded based on their feedback, the course that went live. So then that took about, I want to say 40 hours of recording over a few weeks. I think it was between recording and editing and whatnot. It was about 40 hours. So it was a lot. And then we relaunched it to the public. So we validated the course. And then my business partner works on Facebook ads. And so we were using Facebook ads to bring in that. So it was before I knew how to build communities. And I wish that I would have known how to do that now looking back. But I thought, you know what? I've learned so much about even running a business, starting a course, doing a beta test. And so I learned so much from that anyway. And we still have that course up. We haven't had time to put as much time as we wanted to into it, but it still runs in the background. So that's, another portion of my income, but I would love to revisit that one in particular, maybe in the later part of this year.
But I love how the first thing you did was you went in and joined groups, and you wanted and not just join them and then flood them with, hey, I need this from you. You went in and you asked the admin, you told them what you were doing, and then you offered it up, right? And
Mhm.
then now if you were going to do something in food and beverage, say, you
Mhm.
would what would be your, if you were telling someone or if you were going to do this, what would be your first step now?
Yeah, now I would say go find what they call the watering holes. So, like you had said about the conferences, the trade shows, find every single place. And first, before I even do that, I would outline who is it that you're trying to target? Who is this ideal person? What is their lifestyle? What are they into? What kind of books do they read? Do they go to certain restaurants if they're into food and beverage? Do they believe that a certain type of food is what they whatever they love the best, or certain type of restaurant, what kind of service do they like? Find out who they are and what their lifestyle is like, and then I would go find the places that they hang out in. Who do they tag on Instagram? What places do they eat at? What trade shows do they go to? What email lists are they on? Where can you find multiple of a similar group of people? Or is it Facebook groups? Where are they? And you can find those, I call them social circles online. You can go find the social circles. You can go in and find them on LinkedIn. You can find them by just seeing the followers of certain influencers too. You can just go through the followers of that. There's places where you can find them, but you want to find them in mass. You want to find multiples of these types of people. So I would just brainstorm all of the different places you could potentially find them. And there's, oh gosh, the possibilities are endless once you know who you're looking for.
So then what would be the next step? Just go in there and be present and be like a stalker or what?
Well, first I would go in. It depends on how much knowledge and connection you already have with that industry. So if you're just jumping into it, I would go and just talk to people. Go see what they're talking about. Join forums and get to know them.
Mm.
So just go to get to know them, not to request anything, don't even give value yet, because if you don't know them very well, you could be giving something to them. If you're like, "Hey, look at this article." And they're like, "Really? We don't care about that." And you would then be blacklisted. So I would get to know them, listen to them, see what they're talking about, ask questions, get to know them. So, like you would with anyone that you walk into a party and you're asking them questions and getting to know them. How would you get to know anyone? It's about relationship building. So I would do that. And then from there, if you start seeing problems, uncovering problems, starting to see them pop up potentially in the conversations, I would then give value. So then you're starting to see, and then you already have trust because you've been around. Hopefully, you've been commenting on things, you've been asking questions. Then you can start answering questions. Then you can start giving the value based off of the problems you're hearing. Because again, you don't want to solve a problem or think you're solving a problem of something that they don't care about. So
Right.
you really want to listen.
So I think another thing that I'm trying to do with one of the areas that I'm trying to work on in my business right now is I'm going into groups. I'm very strategic on what kind of groups that I'm joining. And then I am seeing what's going on. I am present. I'm definitely doing some of those things, but I'm also in groups that aren't necessarily just where other people that are exactly like me. They're other entrepreneurs, but they're not other designers where there would be competition possibly, although I think there's plenty to go around. But because and I think one of the things is it's hard to kind of niche down. So as you decided on brand, what was the, because that's, I mean, it's big, but it's also niched, and doing strategy is also niche. So how did you find, like, how did you get to that part? Because I think if a lot of people are like me, we're in groups and we've been strategic and we're being present. And it has to overlap because we're not expecting to make money on the first day. It is relationship building. I'm not asking anybody to marry me the first day I meet them, right? So if I'm in these groups, and somebody asks me what I did, that's where I might have this issue of saying, well, I'm a graphic designer. And I know what I like to do is web design, but I don't think, there's different levels of web design. And I'd be laughable if I go to a coding conference and they're like, oh, yeah, you're right. You code, whatever. I'm like, no, I don't really. I can do very basic things. I can make things bold and italic, right? No, I'm just kidding. I can do a little bit more than that. But like how did you decide? What was that? Was it just something that you were good at? Was it something that you were really interested in? I'll let you answer now.
Yeah. So in my previous job, I went around in different departments and I worked on general graphic design, marketing, and then I went to retail and displays. And then I ended up in a very small team of, it was a brand team, and they called us the design kitchen. We were able to just experiment with things. And this is for $1 billion company. So, we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of funds as well to do these things and experiment and come up with things. And so that team, we worked on all the branding stuff. So it was less on marketing and advertising and all on brand. It was all product graphics. It was packaging. It was logos. It was in-store displays, outer facades of storefronts. So we had our hand in all of the pieces of the brand. And I realized at that point that that's what I like to do. So I got a taste of it at my full-time job. And then from there, when I rebranded, I thought, well, people keep coming to me and their response towards what I do, they're most happy when I'm doing branding for them. And I'm most happy when I'm doing branding. So I thought, well, I'll just do that. So I kept looking at, what do I like to do? What did I have experience in? And what was beneficial to the people I was serving? And it kept coming back to branding. And then from there, I realized that the clients I loved working with the most were those in the lifestyle space. A lot of designers, they were usually accessory designers, fashion designers, interior. They had some design sense already. So I worked really well with them because they already had a good design aesthetic. And I was able to just pull out what made them unique very easily because they were already artistically inclined, creatively inclined. So it was easy to pull out those special things about them. And so then I started targeting. So I didn't just niche down into brand identity and strategy. I was also focusing on the lifestyle space. So anything that had to do with, it could be hospitality, it could be home, it could be fashion, any of that fell into more lifestyle. That was my bend because I liked it and I loved working with those types of people. And so I just kept looking like, what do I like doing? And what do people respond well to? And then move forward with that.
All right. So, but that's not the only pivots you've made. You then have made other pivots. So when did those things start happening and where are the overlaps? And kind of tell them some about the coaching you're doing and then teaching people how to be brand strategists.
Yeah. So after something you recommend about the timeline. So it was about four or 5 years ago that I had that e-course. 4 years ago. And then I started diving more into brand identity and trying to get clients there. Got really frustrated because I hit a wall. So I hit the wall of how much I could get paid or how much people were saying yes to, types of clients I was attracting. And then I started being coached by Chris Do about 3 years ago. And then he really helped a ton with mindset, with the types of clients I was attracting, with how much I thought I could charge and everything. My whole business changed because I had more than of a consultant mindset. And so that was about 3 years ago. And then for that whole year, I was determined to land projects in brand strategy. And once I learned it, I thought, this is it. This is the answer I've been looking for. And I don't know how I'm going to sell this, but I'm going to do this. And so I spent that year working my way up to selling, which my mind was stuck on 10,000 to sell brand strategy for $10,000. And I did. I ended up selling it that year for 10,000. And then people started asking me, just like they did before, so I took about a year, I would say, to do that. And then they started asking me about that. And so I started doing coaching here and there. And then now, 3 years later, I have been doing coaching for a little while now. But 3 years later, I'm finally creating a boot camp around teaching that framework and teaching people how to transfer from designer to brand strategist if they want to make the same transition I did. So it's about like a 1.5 to 2 year process of me learning maybe a service or whatever that is, a service or working with clients and doing that and implementing it. And then the next couple years teaching it. That's what I'm kind of noticing has been the time frame.
But these are things that you're doing while you're doing other things. It's not like you're like, hey, I'm going to go live with my parents for a while and, live in the basement and do this. Like you're still doing brands, or you're still, I think freelance is still making, it's still part of your income, but you realize that there's other things. And now you have your the inner circle is your coaching group, right? So you were doing individual coaching and then you went to group coaching, and that's even morphed into different, the way it started is different than the way it is currently, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I want to add too, with you pointing that out, that if you have, or how I did it is I had an idea, I tested it, I validated it, I developed a system. So I have a sales funnel. I have a way to get leads. I have a way to then sell it, and it's automated. So a lot of these things, like it's not something I think I put in 20 minutes of work a month on Freelance, the first e-course, because it's just updating our accounting. That's it. And so at the moment, we're not actively doing much to draw in leads just because they're coming in from other things I'm doing. So then you start seeing that it's like this ecosystem that the more that I just do, the more it feeds everything. And what I do is I start something, validate it, and then I create the system, put it aside, and I can then water it or fertilize it whenever I want. I can come back to it, but I have that set. So then I have the brain space, the head space to move on to the next thing, put all of my time and energy into it, create the system, run through it, streamline it, put that aside. So now I have 2 machines running right now, then create the next thing. And then the more I do as far as podcasts, as far as getting out there, posting, that just sharing more and more, then that feeds everything that I've already created as a machine. So then it's just feeding it all. And so then everything is growing all together. So it's not like I'm spinning all these plates and I'm just keep on adding plates and more plates and more plates. It's like, no, I'm creating a system, then putting it aside and letting it run.
So one of the other things I love about you is that you're very vulnerable, and you've been very vulnerable online, because we've been able to watch you grow through this process. And it's just like you said, well, I'm going to teach people what I knew about freelancing, or I'm going to teach how the system I use and has worked for me or is currently working for me for brand strategy. And then, and all these things, you're not claiming that everything's perfect. It's still everything's work in motion. A lot of things are able to run on their own because you've figured out systems, which is a whole nother conversation, to be honest. I'm like, wait, I have this whole more questions than I had, but so it, in some ways it's just refining, but it's not like you set out at the beginning of the year and was like, I'm going to refine, I'm going to do blank. It's like it was a natural progression. I think sometimes we fight to find that niche, or to, I think Dimmy's done, he thought he was going to do food and beverage maybe, and then he really just got so caught up in icons and semantics and the way things are, we catalog things. And I think that's that's a norm, we can see it now, but it's like, you just have to kind of go down some different tunnels to see what really is, because I do think a lot of people, it's hard and they feel like it doesn't fit. Right. And I've talked about this recently with my mastermind group, where one of the girls said, oh gosh, it just feels like I keep going back to the drawing board. I'm making all these pivots. And I pointed out to her, I said, but isn't the drawing board a creative's favorite place? Like, what is wrong with pivoting? Because it's not that she is not making an income. It's not that she's not bringing in clients. It's fine. And she just judged herself for going back to the drawing board because she thought, well, no, we're not supposed to. We're just supposed to go straight forward in what we said we're going to do and go all the way and do it for years. And I said, but do you like going back to the drawing board? She goes, that's my favorite place.
And I said, well, then if that's the favorite place, isn't that the creative's life? That is a creative life. Why are we judging ourselves because of that? And that also, even saying it to her, it gave myself freedom. And it's fine that I make these pivots every 1 to 3 years. That's what a creative life is. And I'm most happy doing that. And so following your inclination, following your interests, that as long as you can pay your bills and it's working, then why not? Why not just follow those interests? That's what we love to do. We're curious, we're creative. So
then are you okay doing a lot of this online and sharing some of these where you've had pitfalls or where you've had real struggles? Because this is, again, something that a lot of people do, but just as small. Like if we're talking about all the people, most of the people just have the highlight reel and they don't really share where they're struggling. And so how do you get over that? Or what was the impetus for you starting to do that?
yeah, that's a great question. It's actually something that came up in lunch a couple of days ago, where one of my friends, he goes, how did you get to the point where you are able to be so vulnerable, especially to a lot of people? And I had to think about that for a while, because I thought, now, because I've been doing it for so long, that it's hard to think back at how I got there. But before I got on, one of the biggest things that did it was me just saying yes to being on The Future with Chris, because he asked me, he said, all I'm asking of you is for you to be completely honest. And I thought, well, I can do that. Proving myself, probably not, but I can be honest. And before I met Chris, a couple years before I met Chris, I had been going to therapy. I went to support groups. So I already had a taste of what it was like to be vulnerable. And prior to that, I was what you had said, only showing the highlight reel, only showing what I thought would make me look really good in other people's eyes. And I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable. I was anxious. I was anxious of being found out. It was just awful. I just remember that feeling. And it was a black cloud that I thought, the more that I kept doing these things, the more I tried to look perfect, that someday that black cloud would leave me. And it never did. And it never left me until I started being vulnerable. So until I started going into groups and safe spaces that I was allowed to just share what I was feeling and what I was going through without anyone talking back to me. And so in the group I was in, there was no what they call crosstalk. So you don't respond to what anyone else says. You just are given 3 minutes to say literally whatever you want, not about anyone else, but about what you're going through, what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you're having a hard time with. And it felt really weird at first, but after doing that, I realized I've been needing this the whole time. I just needed some place to be heard in a non-judgmental space, that I could just get out what I was thinking and feeling without anyone trying to change me, change how I feel, give me advice. So I've been trained to be vulnerable through those situations. So by the time I got on a call with Chris, he was surprised at how open I was, because I'm like, I don't care at this point. Like I'm fine sharing. So then he thought, well, okay, great. If I ask you to be honest, he did believe that I was going to actually be honest. So yeah, it was a few years before that I feel like I was cracked open.
So maybe a prerequisite is to, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It froze for a second there, so I was just making sure. So a prerequisite maybe is to going to therapy or finding a group where you feel accepted and not judged on whatever you're sharing about. Yeah. And I totally agree. Think therapy is a great place to do that, because that's where somebody can maybe ask you some questions that you can maybe think deeper about, right?
Yeah.
So having a mastermind, being a part of a mastermind, or being part of a group where questions are encouraged is really important, where nobody is attacking somebody else and people have a safe place to share. I think that would be when you're looking for a group, if whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever kind of group, those would be things you would be looking for. Maybe active groups, people who have multiple people who are active instead of just the same 5 people probably. And then is it something that I need to come in every day, or is it something that I need to come in once a week? Or if it's once a month, that might not be a very active group that when you're going back, when you're talking about testing, or when you're talking about getting information, or trying to find places that could be great clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any other tips about groups, or what to look for that would, and I guess it's different with every person, but.
Yeah. So as far as like a mastermind or something for yourself.
It could be, or for marketing, like when you're talking about going in and into a group, say you were doing all these graphic design things. So say instead of just blanket going out, you were being really strategic, and you were going to join a group about food and beverage, and it was just going to be restaurant owners. And then you go in and you're listening and you're asking questions. But how do you know if it's a group that you should be spending a lot of time in? Are you doing this for 30 groups, or do you know what I mean? Like, how do you decide which one to really invest time in?
Yeah, I would do, if the more research you do, the better, because then you would, like you said, be strategic about it. Only find very, very high quality ones. I would even consider paying to be in groups. So if you find, I know some people in the Future Pro group, that is a paid group, they pay to be in that group, and they also just give so much value. So a paid group is probably the best, because you're going to not get the ones that are free on Facebook. Honestly, there's just dumping of people telling each other what to do. There's a lot of complaining going on. I would stay far, far away from those. I would go try and find, and you might have to take a while to do this, but find the very high quality groups where there is the high quality questions being asked. There are people actually taking action. So usually that happens in a paid group. So I would look at groups. I would actually look into groups that I don't want to say influencers, but people that are your mentors online, the ones that they're leading, I would look into those. So if there is someone that is leading, who's putting out a ton of content in, let's say you're using the food and beverage example, if they're putting out a ton of content in the food and beverage space, I would pay and be a part of whatever group that they are doing. I would even pay and buy whatever product that they're selling or whatever that is. And there's so many different ways of doing this, but I would find someone who is already serving that space in a different way, and then see the groups that they are forming. And because then you have a frame of reference, you know what type of content they're putting out, you know what type of content the people in the group are ingesting and what they're consuming. And so then you have a frame of reference to go off of. So that's what I would do if I was looking for a group. And for clients, as far as serving clients.
Right. It's also important to know that you have something that really could be, if there's another product that exists or another service that exists that's like yours, then you're not the trailblazer, or maybe nobody wants that because they know how to tie their shoes or whatever, right? You have this huge video series about tying your shoes, and you're like, nobody needs this, Melinda. Thanks so much. We use Velcro here, or whatever, right? Yeah. So sometimes it's really important again, this isn't the vacuum. So how important when you are trying to get work, or you're teaching people about, or people are going out into these groups, how important is it for them to also have a safe group with other designers or other entrepreneurs that are like in a mastermind?
Yeah, I cannot stress that enough. I think the first group, I was a part of a mastermind group early on with the first e-course. So 4 or 5 years ago, even before that e-course, I was a part of a group, and we all were in different industries. And it was helpful. It didn't help me as much as when I was in a group with similar people in the same industry. It was amazing though. And I saw the power of having a group like that was encouraging, that brought different perspectives, that was supportive. I met with them, I want to say once a week. And I was super scared too. I just found them on Facebook, and I had asked in the Facebook group, is there any local groups here I could join? Because I just wanted to start meeting somebody. I was so alone and working for myself. And someone said, oh, we actually have online mastermind pods that you could join. I'm like, sure, just put me in it and I'll go. And I was so scared because I'm like, oh, these people know what they're doing and I don't. And so I got put in a group with some amazing women And that jump started me into the whole idea of groups and masterminds and a support group. And from there, I went to a group that was specific to my industry. And that was extremely helpful because we were all sharing knowledge that what pertained to what we were actually doing. But I would say it's extremely helpful to have, it's a non-negotiable at this point for me. Like I don't believe I can grow if I don't have a group. And I also have a group in my personal life that I am a part of. We meet once a week. We do life together. We share what's going on. I'm in a text thread with them. And every single morning we send 3 things that we're grateful for. And I know that they're my safe space. So I figure I don't care if the world hates me because I've got my safe people. It's like having your family, that you are accepted, that you're loved. So I have that in my personal life, but then I do have mastermind groups and whatnot in my industry. But it's wonderful to have that, because again, it gives me the confidence to go out into the world knowing I've got people who've got my back and who will never leave me and who will always accept me. And it gives me that confidence to do really scary things that I never thought that I would do. Especially wouldn't do it if I was alone and I had no one to back me up.
All right. So that might be a mistake for some people, is again, being in the vacuum, right? Yeah. So what other kind of mistakes did you learn or happened early, either in freelancing or in doing teaching brand strategy, or even in the coaching, that now have, again, because it doesn't matter exactly where it was, you've learned and maybe applied it to the next thing that you were doing? What kind of mistakes have you made?
Oh gosh, so many. A big one when I started learning brand strategy was I didn't even know where to put my energy, and I didn't know how to reach out and do lead generation. So marketing, content marketing, lead gen, business development. I wanted to perfect my craft. And I thought that if I just perfected the way I designed before even brand strategy, if I just perfected my logo design, if I just perfected the way I did brand identity, that I would have a slew of clients coming in. And I did not think like a business person. I did not realize, oh, I actually have to do marketing. I actually have to build relationships. I didn't put any of my time into that until I met my coach. And then I got a rude awakening there, but it was good. I mean, I needed it, but that was a huge mistake I was making, because I would go through feast or famine all the time, and it evened out and I made a fine income and I was able to pay my bills, but it was not predictable. I didn't get the money when I needed it. And so it was just constant, like, everything's amazing. I have way too much to do and too many clients. And then, oh my gosh, everything's horrible. Now I have a ton of time. And what am I going to do with it? Because I didn't know how to do marketing. I didn't know what to do. So that was a huge mistake that I wish that I knew that, but now I do. So it's all good.
When did you start reading business books?
I've always been interested in business, but for whatever reason, I didn't apply it to my service-based business. I was always thinking product. But I started reading a lot more business books probably when I got laid off. During that time, I started realizing, like, oh, I got to figure this out. But I didn't even know which ones to look at. So the one, though, that really changed things for me was the E-Myth. When I read that book, then everything started clicking. So all the other business books I read, they probably were saying a very similar thing, but I just didn't get it. And then once I read the E-Myth, that was extremely helpful, because it totally outlined what I was doing. Is I was trying to be the hands. I was trying to perfect my craft, but that doesn't mean you're a business person. That does not mean you're the entrepreneur. And I always had an interest in entrepreneurship. And so that book just laid out clearly what my issue was and then helped me. So that was a few years ago that I read that.
All right. So I love that. I think I have that in my Audible, but I don't know if I've started that one. I think Andre was saying, any recommendations on books? I don't know if you have a list on your website.
I do.
Okay.
I do. Yeah.
Well, then we will make sure that's in the chat underneath, and you can always get to our website at marksandmaker.com. Is that where this list is somewhere?
That is. Yeah. And it's in the journal. It's 21 books for business strategy and design.
Awesome.
I'm actually find it really quick.
Okay. And I'm going to just put your regular, all these links will be I don't know if you people on YouTube can see this right now. I'm so sorry if you can't see the chat. But thanks for joining us. Okay. So how quickly do you pivot now? Because it seems like it's it goes quicker now that you have gone up and down the roller coaster a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, when I have the bandwidth, when I have the interest. So if something piques my interest and I have the time, and it's funny because the more and more that I do and I create systems for, the more time I'm creating for myself. So my income's going up, but my time I need to dedicate to things is getting less and less because I'm learning how to make processes and streamlining things. So now it's like someone approaches me and they go, "Hey, do you want to collaborate on this project?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, this seems awesome. Let's do it." So I'm now just going with my creative interests is when it comes up and as I'm able to, as far as time's concerned. So like my friend Anthony and I are doing a 30-day challenge on Instagram. And I just thought, hey, it'd be really fun to do this. And I literally just want to do it as it's just for fun. We don't have an agenda with it. We're just doing it for fun. But then as we're talking, we're like, well, this would be kind of cool for a book. What if we did a book with this? And so I'm just doing what I want to do as far as creatively is concerned, self-initiated projects. And then if they turn into something, I'll follow it and I'll do it. So there's really no time frame anymore. It's just as I have time and as I have interest, I'll go down that road.
Okay, so let's go back to that for a little bit because this challenge is, I love these illustrations that he's doing. The information, the point that you're getting across that you're sharing is really impactful. And those are some of the promos that I shared on my stories on Instagram. So because we are able to follow our curiosity, and I do think that's an important part, whether it's coming back to the drawing table or whatever that is, I think it is really important that we do those things. Now, whether you're working a full-time job or you're doing something else, this is one of those things where when you are working a full-time job or you're in school, you think, I don't have time for this, or I don't want to do any more design when I get home. How does this not feel like that? Because this 30-day challenge that you do with a friend, this could be something that becomes something more, but it's not a huge, 30 days is not a huge commitment, right? But you've had to commit to learning something and then sharing that thing. So I think this is a great place for somebody to start who thinks that they don't have time to do something like this, right?
Yeah.
Would you say?
Well, I look at it as it's my hobby. Like that's my playtime. So I don't see it as, oh, I don't want to come home and do work anymore. I don't want to design anymore. I'm literally like you had mentioned, I'm following my curiosity. I'm following what I just like to do. So I don't even think of it as work. And if someone doesn't want to do it, well, maybe that's probably not something they should be doing. Like okay. I read, I think, I write on my free time. I love doing that kind of thing. I have conversations with people in my free time. I collaborate and think of fun things with Anthony when I'm talking to him. So I'm like, I do this anyway. Why not just lean in even more into it? So whatever you do find joy in, why not just lean into it and see where it takes you? So
I love that. Okay. So how do you determine if something's working or not? You talk about how do you test it? How do you validate it? Can you dig into that a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. So first I would find a group of people that need something, ask them, talk to them, see what the real problem is. What are they complaining about? What is really difficult for them? So first it's finding the audience or the group of people, then seeing what are they trying to get to? What are they trying to do? And what obstacles are they having in getting there? And are you able to help them solve that problem? Because as a creative, as even a designer, we're problem solvers. So just get really good at finding problems. Just in talking to people, ask them questions to find out what the problem is. What are you trying to do? What are obstacles that you're having in getting to that? And then see where your skills match up with the solutions to those problems, or how can you help them in that? So that's one. And then creating something that would solve it, or maybe solve a little piece of it, and then give it to them and say, hey, I made this checklist. Hey, I made this book list. That solves a problem right there, right? The book list that I made. So people asked, hey, I need some books. Great. I made some books. Do you want to read it? Do you want to read the list? That's a solution to a small problem. And then they go, yeah, of course I do. And then you work your way up to bigger and bigger problems because they already trust you. You're like, they look at you and they say, well, you've already solved a problem for me. You've already given me a book list. What else do you have? What else can you teach me? What else can you give me? So that's the starting point, I would say.
So then how do you determine if like this thing with you and Anthony could be, I know it could be a book for sure, but how do you determine if it is something that people would pay for? I mean, that you're testing it like it's a product, or say you have this problem, you figured out a way to solve it for people. How do you test that?
Yeah, I typically, well, what I have done with almost all of my groups or e-courses is I create a wait list. So I first read the comments. I see, because I have a lot of DMs of people saying, hey, I would buy this if it was a poster. Hey, you should put this into a book. So I'm already getting suggestions. So I might put some stuff out on social media and say, hey, it seems like we got a good response from this. What if we did this? Would you buy it? Just to get some yes or no's. Then I would move it to, okay, well, here's a wait list. If you really want it, why don't you sign up? We'll give you first news on it if it does. So then we'll see, and I've done this for a lot of things where I'll see on the wait list how many people are actually interested. And I've scrapped ideas that didn't get that much interest. And it depends on what it is that I'm selling or what it is I'm trying to make, that the goal will be different. Like, oh, I have 10 people interested. Awesome, I'll make it. But if it's a book, I definitely will want more people that are interested. So I get a wait list going. Then I've done a pre-sale. So they would not get, it's almost like a Kickstarter, but I don't use Kickstarter. But I've done pre-sales before where I say, great, so you've been on the wait list. Here's what we're thinking. If we have enough people that are pre-ordering, we will make it. And so then I'll send out a pre-sale link, and which that model can be adjusted even for services. So it doesn't have to be just a product. It could also be for services too. So you just have to adjust it a little bit for whatever it is you're selling.
So I love that. So how often you have a newsletter that people can sign up for at marksandmaker.com. How often do you send out that newsletter? Or like if you were segmenting it for these people who wanted the poster or these people who wanted the book, how often would you send something to that wait list or send something? Is it just when you're doing something else, or like, so one, how often do you send to your newsletter to everybody? And then how often would you send to a wait list?
Yeah. So the newsletter, I used to have, I have two segments. One is just behind the scenes of my business, of what's going on, my thoughts, just as an entrepreneur and a business owner. The other one is a segment of just strategy. So I have, those are my two big main newsletters. It used to be once a week that I would send out emails. I can't sustain that at this very moment. And so it's been, I try to do once to twice a month on both of those main newsletters. I try to. Doesn't always happen, but it's okay because I put a lot of time and energy into writing, and they're longer form. They're not short emails. I don't like doing those spammy marketing emails. Like if I'm sending you an email, it's going to be full of substance. So I'd rather keep with quality over quantity. But for about a year and a half, I was writing a week, every single week, and people were looking forward to it. They're all numbered too. So it's like a journal entry. So that's the main one. The wait list, I actually don't email until I have something to say about the product. So I say, hey, you've been on this wait list. You said that you're interested. The thing is finally up and running. Here's the information. Just because I don't have an email strategy robust enough to be sending them too many things. And, send too many things and people drop off the email anyway.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have your mastermind, the inner circle. How often is that? So that's a 3-month commitment from people. So is it opened up quarterly, or can you kind of talk about that and how that's changed across?
Yeah. So I started that about a year and a half ago when people were saying, hey, I would join a group if you made a group. So I'm getting all these requests and I'm thinking, okay, fine, I'll do a group. Cause I was being told that for 4 months. And it was a lot of my close friends. I'm like, you're just saying that because you're my friend. And they're like, no, I would pay. If you had a group, I would. So I'm like, fine. So I started a wait list and I kept mentioning it in my newsletters. I said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this group. If you want info on when I launch, sign up for a wait list, So I got about 200 people on a wait list for this, or an interest list. And then I put together a quick sales page. and got that running. And I started it monthly, and I realized that, that I wanted to have more control over who came in, because I just let whoever wanted to sign up. Because I'm like, I would be happy with just one person if they wanted to pay me to be in a group. But as it got more well known, I cut it off and only had enrollment every 3 months. And then it got to a point where the group so it wasn't huge, but it was big enough to where if it got any bigger, then people would not be able to speak and be heard and be known. And that is very important to me. And so I started limiting who I let in, and I had an interview process, an application process. And I started to not even open it up every 3 months, because I was waiting for someone to leave and nobody was leaving. So, which is fantastic. So I hit a sweet spot where people aren't leaving, and I will only open up enrollment every 3 months if someone leaves the group and I need to fill a spot. But besides that, it's a closed group right now until then. So people just keep re-upping the subscription every 3 months to stay in.
That's awesome. So me and you have had lots of conversations about that, because my group is different. I can't do it on a continuous basis because it stresses me out. So, Andre asked about the newsletter. So how would you do it for services? A sign up newsletter? So I think you could probably do some sort of lead magnet to be honest, who would be a customer and what they would be needing, and then give them tips on something, right? But what would you say for a service?
Yeah, I actually have a video on this that I can give you a link to. It's a free video that it's about this particular thing too. But I would have a sign up for them. I would be giving them something of value even before that. So not just like, hey, sign up for this thing to get my PDF of whatever. Give them value even before that, so that they're like, oh, I want to be on this list, because I know not just what this lead magnet is that it's going to be valuable. Everything you're going to be emailing me is going to be extremely valuable. And that was what I actually had no lead magnet for. I only have lead magnets on certain pages, but I wanted people to sign up for the newsletter because they knew the newsletter itself was going to be extremely valuable, and it would be talking about their very particular problem that they're going through. And I wanted people to desire that email, not just these little things that like, oh, it's going to solve your problem. Because my motto too is win hearts before they even need you, before they need to sign up for your service or before they need to hire you. I want people to be following my journey, my work, my thoughts, the content that I give them, the help that I give them, the enjoyment and the feeling that I encourage them into before they even need to hire me. I want someone to go, when I'm ready, I want to hire Melinda. That's the kind of people that I particularly want. I don't just want people at the time of need. I want them to I want to nurture them over the long haul. So it's figuring out how to, if you're good at relationships, learn how to be good at relationships. I read a lot of psychology books. I read a lot on empathy, very interested in that. And I think those things coupled with the business books have been so helpful, because I'm learning how to be a human, how to be kind to people, how to spark their interest, how to listen to them. That really has helped. So I would learn how to just be really good at relationships, and you'll naturally figure out what to do next on your email list and how to get people to sign up. It's like a natural thing.
So Andre asked a great question, but I just want, so my mom knows, a lead magnet is just, a lead is a new customer, could be a new customer for you, a new client. Not that my mom has any clients, people, but that's okay.
But if she wanted to.
But if she wanted to, just in case somebody's out here and doesn't know what it is. And then a magnet just means it's a place on the internet that, on your website, more than likely, like a page that's just branded for this, possibly, or it's like a sign up list or something that'll get them to give you their email address, so that now you have this, so you can start connecting with them on a regular basis. It's kind of like if you see somebody and you want to ask them on a date, you used to ask them for their phone number, right? It's like a phone number magnet, I guess, sort of. I don't know. That was a bad analogy.
Well, a magnet too, think about a magnet, it attracts someone. So
Yes.
why would someone give you their email address? Why? You got to make it good enough. You got to make it really enticing. Why would a girl give someone her number? that has to be enticing enough. There has to be a good enough reason. So we have to give a good enough reason for someone to fork over their email list or their email address.
So this is a great analogy. And I like that we're going here because Andre's next question, I think a lot of my students ask this question. I deal with a lot of entrepreneurs that ask the same question. So you use the newsletter. This is what Andre asked. So you use the newsletter to show how it's your work and what you're about before working with you. So there's a couple things. I think for people who are more visual, your newsletter could be something that I want to eat it because it's just so good. I want to consume, and I would want to purchase these things that you're giving me for free. It could be more visual. There's absolutely no problem with that. Mm-hmm. But there's also, it's kind of like if you were out on that first date with that person and I'm selling myself the whole night, they are not going to want a second date with me. So it has to be about them, and it needs to be about that conversation that you're having with them, or something that you have found that helps them, or right? What else? Yeah. What other kind of ideas would you give, Andre?
Oh gosh, yeah. So what you had said, just put yourself in their shoes. What do they want? What are they looking at? What are the problems they're going through? What are they thinking through the day? What would be funny for them? Like, what in the context of what you're doing. So think of things through their eyes. It's like the date thing. This person really likes puppies. So you send them DMs of like funny puppy videos, things like that. What do you do when you want to share something that someone else likes? You share that with them. The other thing that's very valuable for people, especially entrepreneurs, are behind the scenes of your own business. So a lot of people don't want to do this because they're like, well, if people saw behind my business, they're going to think that I don't know what I'm doing. And I've had so many people, even designers mostly, say, well, aren't you scared to share that stuff? Because what if your client sees it? And I'm like, great, that's going to build more trust. And I'm going to be the only one that's brave enough to share what's going on. And I want clients that are like that. I want transparent clients. I don't want clients who are trying to prove themselves. I don't want clients that wear a mask. And if that's the case, then I should be the same way. So I think behind the scenes of your business is very interesting, and it's very helpful for other entrepreneurs, even if they're in a different industry as you. So if it's like food and beverage, to still hear, oh, this is how lead generation worked for me. And it's like this meta thing, but it still works. It's still very helpful. The other thing is resources. So I was taught through one of the courses I took that if you're sending out emails, if you just want a simple plan, the first one would be a behind the scenes of your business, of like what's worked for you business wise. So not getting too jargony in your industry, but more of like business wise, lead generation, business development. How has that worked for you? What's worked? Yeah.
Oh, but I pushed mute by accident. I meant to do speaker view because I was raising my hand because I'm trying to think about this for Andre. And because I think this is actually a whole show kind of thing, because this is how I teach web design. Yeah. It's about who's coming, not so it's a service. So think about how this has worked for another customer. So Andre has done books, and so how did what Andre did allow them to reach more customers for their Chamber of Commerce, or for the monastery book thing? I can't remember. Do you know what I mean? So now it's kind of like a case study of this client, because you have a different way of looking at teaching history through sequential art. I don't know. What do you call that? It's not story comics. What do you call it?
I'm at a loss here.
It's like
comic books. Andre said comic books.
Okay, so it's like comic books, but it's not comic-y. He's teaching history, but it's a way.
Storyboard?
I can't remember. It's like Mouse, the novel. It's like graphic novels. That's what it is.
Okay,
like a graphic novel.
Got it. Yeah.
But he's teaching like stuff with science and biology, and it just is like, whoa! I didn't realize I could reach this audience. This audience is somebody else that they would want to reach, but they're not reaching. So now you could say, hey, is this something that interests you? Are these people part of, because now it's about them and it's about helping them, and you're just giving them information, right? And they don't have to use you, Andre. Obviously, if they wanted to do really well, they would use you, but it's not selling, it's selling them on the idea of, here's an idea of reaching new people, and here's how I've done
Yes.
it with multiple clients, right?
Yeah. That can do it. Yeah. How I've done it with multiple clients or how I've done it myself. Either work. Because if you don't have that great of case studies or whatever the reason, you have so much to pull from your own successes. But also, yes, I think if you're able to, the whole idea is paint a picture that someone else can put themselves in the shoes of. They're like, oh, I want that. Yeah, that story of the success of that. I want that. Oh, and you're telling me how? Perfect. And if you're not only telling me how, I could hire you to do that for me, even better. So that is really, really good. The other thing I was taught too is just sending a link, an email of links of resources. Like, hey, I found this really good article in Forbes. I found this really good article in whatever the food and beverage, trade show or whatever. I heard these are coming up, and giving it to them for it's something that that would be helpful for them, or you can at least see and send it out and see and ask, was this helpful for you? What else are you looking into or whatever, but resources and behind the scenes, whether that is your business or like you said, a client case studies.
It's more about them and not about just showing you and
right
what you can do. So we didn't get to finish barely half of what these were. So I'm going to ask you the last two as quick ones. How do you recharge and what inspires you? That's one question. I know it's really two, but it's considered.
Yeah. How do I recharge? Well, I think it's kind of the same answer for both. Is I recharge by, even though I'm an introvert, I think that creatively I do recharge with people. So in conversations, in collaborating, in brainstorming, I definitely, I need that for my creative brain to thrive and be inspired. And hanging out with my dog would probably be just general recharging would be hanging out with my dog.
All right. So then the last one is, what's next? What could we expect? Where can we, and I'll share where to find you in just a second, but what's next for you?
Yeah. So what's next? My brand strategy bootcamp, the thing that I did a beta on, that is going to be coming out in April is when I'll be teaching that. So the first one that's going out to the public, I'm super excited about. And then I'm going to be more involved in the future and doing stuff there. And then just all random, I don't know, 30-day challenges, probably more 30-day challenges coming out, more content coming out. And just seeing wherever my creativity leads me.
I love that. So one time I was telling my mom something about the future and she's like, she said something like, well, where did you learn that? And I was like, I learned it on the future. And she's like, on the future? Are you okay, Diane? She didn't realize what it was. Anyway, I thought it was hilarious. So cute. I know, she thought I was going crazy. I learned it from my future self. I came back in time. I just wanted to tell you. Anyway, so I'm going to share some ways to connect with Melinda. And if you're going to Creative South, Melinda's going to be there. Super excited that you guys can all hang out and see her as well. So you can find her at Marks with an S and spell it out, Maker. I don't know how she'd spell that, .com. And then you can also find her at Melinda Livesey, Livsey. It's the same on Instagram, on LinkedIn. Then you can check out the Prelance if you're looking to do that part. And then if they wanted to get on the boot camp email list or the wait list or the wait list for the inner circle, is the best way just to do Marks and Maker and sign up there?
Yeah. So go to Marks and Maker, the whatever's on the header, that just right away to sign up for that. And then in the first email, there'll be a lot of links in there. And one of which is the wait list for the boot camp, because I'm currently only going to open up enrollment for people who are on my list who are already engaged with it. So that they're going to get first dibs on it.
Nice. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for giving us so much of your time. I greatly appreciate it. So next week starts a 3 or a 2-part series because I have jury duty one week, might not be able to be here in the jury duty week. So we'll see. It just works out that I plan to do a part series. So we'll see. It'll be there sometime. So it'll be episode 332. It'll be a rapid recharge and it's a 3-part series. Hopefully it'll be full 3. we'll see. But check it out next week, and I can't wait to have you guys all along. I have a couple ideas that I'm still deciding which one to do, but probably it will be mindset related because those have been the things that I've been learning a ton about. So I hope you guys will join me next week. And Melinda, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you, and I appreciate that just how willing you are to be vulnerable, but also willing you are to share and be open. You're just a great person, and you're just realist, like you're normal. You're a real normal person.
That's the
So
best compliment I've got. Thank you.
Anyway, I mean, so I think sometimes people put people on pedestals, and you just really, I love that you just share and you're real, and just thank you for being you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Diane.
We'll see you guys next week. Let's see if I can stop this.